Randy. Welcome to the 401k Marketing Podcast. Everyone, this is Randy Fuss with Fuss Success Builders. If you don't already know him, I would be very surprised. He has been an active speaker on the circuit for 20 plus years. Yeah. Trusted professional and longtime friend. So welcome to the podcast.
Glad to be here, and I've enjoyed many years of collaborating with you.
Well, first of all, let's open up and talk about practice management. This is a word that we hear lots and lots and lots in our industry. Help us understand what it is and why is it essential for retirement plan advisors?
It's a great question, and practice management can go a lot of different ways. I always like to start big picture. I've been actually a practice management coach for the last 15 plus years, and I always like with just contrasting two very similar terms, working in your practice versus working on your practice, right? Working in, this is the day-to-day grind of meeting with clients and prospects, answering emails, phone calls, putting out fires. It's just an endless reactionary day. Working on your practice, this is more 30,000 foot view where you can step away from the day-to-day grind and try to figure out how you can improve performance. And if you take a look at the ratio of time spent on each, for a lot of advisors, it's 100% to 0%. But if you can even spend 1% of your time working on your practice, that's 2 hours a month. And to me, that's what you decide to work to improve your practice.
Wow, 2 hours a month. That feels so easy, but then in reality, it's probably really challenging, right? So let's explain the big three.
Well, again, let's go with the premise that practice management can mean a lot of things. And so I went to the most trusted resource out there, Google. I actually Googled practice management. And on the entire first page, as I scrolled down, it was very medical based or attorneys. It was policies and procedures, operations, compliance, codes of conduct, HR hiring practice. It was a whole bunch of stuff. And if you think about our industry, regulatory updates, ERISA, Secure Act 2.0, fee transparency, I mean, the list goes on and on and on. But you know what? As I was scrolling through Google, I finally got to the second page where I found the first definition for financial services. You know what it said? Practice management is all about maintaining relationships with existing clients, winning new clients, and maximizing ROI. So let me kind of boil that down even further, because this was saying existing clients, new clients, and ROI. Here's my big three: increase wins, increase retention, and increase efficiency. That's it. That's the big three. And I have about 8 different presentations that all in some way, shape, or form are about increasing the big three.
I love that. We always talk about it's three circles in a Venn diagram. So what does marketing do for you? We increase your brand awareness. That's the first Venn diagram circle. We increase your client retention, which is the second Venn diagram. And then we increase your new business opportunities, your new wins. And when you look at the Venn diagram, the overlaps are referrals, centers of influence, and new prospects going, am I with the right advisor? Should I hire you? So poking those seeds of doubt. And in the middle of the Venn diagram, this is all over our website, by the way, we've talked about it lots, actually creates a triangle when you do 3 circles together. And it says your business or your practice for today. And all of that together creates a stronger financial advisory firm with happy clients refer business, happy centers of influence, think of you, you're top of mind, and then more prospects think, oh, am I with the right advisor? Am I higher? Maybe I should interview you and learn more. So love that. So wins, efficiency, and retention.
That's correct.
Practice management. That's awesome. All right. So for a very long time, for as long as I've known you, you have been a certified DISC trainer and a registered corporate coach. What is the DISC assessment? And can you explain it? And how can it improve overall conversations and connections?
First of all, I'm going to focus on only one of the big three, which is increasing wins. For some
Let's
reason, advisors seem to like that topic, right? So DISC at its fundamental core is one of a number of different programs that identify 4 different behavioral traits, personalities, so to speak. Kolbe, Myers-Briggs, old school is social styles in DISC,
Yeah.
right? So I think most of the audience has been through 1 or 2 of those programs before, but DISC is really the only one that is specific for sales. Right, so DISC is an acronym. I'll just kind of quickly run through the 4. The D is for dominance. And this type of personality is a very take charge individual who absolutely loves to be in control of everything. You have the high I, which is this very animated individual that is all about looking for recognition. You got the S for steadiness. And this is a very nice but more subdued individual that is really after security and stability. And then to round out the 4, the C is for compliance. This is your analyzer, and they love being right. Now, where it applies to sales is both the salesperson and the buyer, right? And if the buyer and the seller are both of the same personality, there's a good chance of sales success. But the real problems is when it misfires that the seller and buyer have different personality types. Sometimes we refer to it as oil and water, right? So when you're in this oil and water situation, how do you increase sales success? By the seller adapting. It's all about adaptive selling. And the one that's able to put themselves across the table next to the buyer and speak their language, how they like to process and make buying decisions, is the person that's most likely to be successful.
In the previous podcast, we talked about the Kolbe Index and how to use it amongst your team. So that way you can figure out who are the folks who are fact finders, who's a researcher, who's a quick start, who's a finisher. So now this is another complement to understanding personalities, how people work. But on this side, like you just mentioned, it's how do you work across the table with someone who's not like you, whatever your DISC profile says, and then you can speak in a way that they appreciate and understand. And if it's a driver, an influencer, steadiness, or compliance, you can adjust your sales pitch so that way what you're saying or not saying, as we've learned with certain personality types, comes across and they want to hire you. I love this. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that? Maybe some inside ideas?
Absolutely. So I've developed a program specifically for qualified retirement plans. It's called Creating a Boardroom Advantage. And let me kind of walk through a couple things when it comes to Boardroom Advantage. Our sales in our industry is unique in that you have multiple decision makers in there, right? And I'm referring to a finance presentation primarily, right? So on the buy side, you will probably have the CEO in there, the CFO, the HR professional, maybe the head of marketing or the sales manager. They all have different personality types. And on your side of the table, it might not just be the advisor. The advisor might partner with a DCIO. They might bring in a record keeper or TPA. So there's 2 or 3 salespeople, and then you have the buyers on the other side. There's been some tools that I've been supporting for over 10 years that start very simple. What industry are you calling on? Because an engineering firm is going to be different than a nonprofit, which will be different than a car dealership, which will be very different from a group of attorneys. Right, so just industry could define personality a little bit in terms of buying behaviors. It could be the job role. The HR professional will process information differently from the CEO. But the real fundamental core is called cues and clues. Cues and clues. Cue, all I got to do is listen, right? So what is the volume of their voice? What is the pitch? What is the inflection? Is it flatline? I mean, just based upon voice and hearing, you can pick up some ideas of what their personality is. The clues are things you just got to use your eyes. How are they dressed? What is their posture? What is their facial expression? What are the surroundings around them? And if I put this all together, it's listen and look before you speak, right? So observe. And I'll kind of share with you that maybe one of the 2 decision makers you've had the opportunity to meet before. So it's not just walking into a boardroom cold, right? And having all this information, you can identify who they are. And then the speaking part is, let's give you some tips on how to approach these particular buyers. That's what's been around for a while. Do you want to hear about AI? Because AI has taken things so quickly, so fast. So first of all, on the sales side, I used to generate reports that, I'd send it to a seller, a sales team. It was about $70 a person. They're very accurate, but not cost effective. AI can now generate these things for an absolute fraction of that. Same thing, a salesperson can do an online assessment. It'll spit out a nice report of, here's all of your tendencies. The buy side is where it gets crazy. On the buy side, you can now take a decision maker, plug their name into LinkedIn, and I've got a Chrome extension, and out pops this little button that says view personality. So I can actually take a buyer, a potential client, and click on this particular button, which says sales playbook, and it will generate about a 5-page strategy document on how to approach them in a sales session. Rebecca, I ran one on you. I'm just curious to get your feedback on it.
It was like reading a mirror. It was so accurate. It was scary. I actually passed it on to my husband to say, honey, the next time we talk, read it when you're ready. Like, don't jump into it. But this is so who I am. And he read it and even said, wow. And it was very helpful for him at the same time. So that way he could, the next time we're talking, he's like, oh, I understand now why when I cut you off, for example, you don't like that. And I'm like, well, I don't think anyone likes that, but I do love you very much. But it was so wonderful. And I would like to run one on him, Randy. Maybe afterwards you can use your Chrome extension. It is literally like looking through a mirror, and it's so incredibly insightful to have dialogue with the person on how they like to receive that information, so that way you can present it in the best way possible.
Yeah, I got a couple more things to add to this. So obviously this tool can improve marriages. It actually can improve workplace, right? You're mentioning prior Myers-Briggs. It does have a very practical application in terms of coworkers taking assessments and know how to communicate with each other. But going back to sales, I know it sounds a little creepy, like what, you're just going to scrape some words out of LinkedIn and put this playbook together? It's not 100% accurate. It is called, predictive behavior. And AI is saying, hey, based upon the words that you used in your LinkedIn profile, these are your buying tendencies. Mm-hmm. Sometimes a broker dealer might dictate some language put in the LinkedIn profile that might skew it a little bit. But I want to share with you a real live experience that happened a couple of years ago. And again, these reports just keep getting more robust than they were just a few years ago. They used to be a simple 2-page document. It's much more robust now. Former company, one of our wholesalers, was partnering with an advisor to go on a finals presentation. Of all things, it was a Girl Scout council. Okay, here is my natural tendency of what I think you should do in that meeting. I'm going to talk about Thin Mints, how much I love Thin Mints, how I put sleeves of them in the freezer. And 6 months after the Girl Scouts were out in front of the supermarket, I'm pulling out a sleeve with a big glass of milk. It's one of the only times I drink milk, and I take down a sleeve of frozen Thin Mints.
So good.
We ran, by the way, this product is called Crystal, right? So we ran the Crystal reports on the 3 decision makers that were part of this finals presentation. All of them were sharks. Every single one of them, it said, no chit chat, straight to business. And guess what? We had a competitive advantage. I'll call it an unfair advantage over any other competitor, other advisors walking in there that got down the Thin Mint trap and probably had the 3 of them looking at them like they have 2 heads going like, we're not here to talk about my damn cookies. We're here to discuss our 401k plan, or in this case, a 403b. Yeah. So we won that business. I wouldn't be remiss if I didn't mention another extraordinary application, right? So far, I'm kind of saying the seller is the advisor, the buyer is the plan sponsor. How about all the wholesalers out there? The wholesalers are wholesaling to financial advisors. So this is one of the few times that the financial advisor is actually the buyer of the equation. The wholesaler is the salesperson.
Sure.
For all the wholesalers of the world, you have the ability to drop in the name of an advisor, and it will push out a similar playbook, 5 pages in length, that will give you some ideas on how to interact with that individual. Again, if it sounds a little creepy, because I've had that feedback on like, this just seems weird. I think folks are realizing that AI has come a long way. But from my point of view, if you can have a document that is saying, this is how this person likes you to communicate to them, that is going to do nothing but improve dialogue overall and maybe save a lot of wasted time.
I'm in my head, I'm thinking about all the old school sales tactic trainings that I've had where you do like body mirror posturing, the first 5 minutes of a conversation or chit chat. Then you would establish your agenda. You go through your agenda, whatever is prepared. You back and forth conversations. And then at the end, you always repeat what you had originally said on your agenda and then close with, some sort of, how can we move forward with this? A presumptive close. This is the classic sales training, a presumptive close. And I just think that this AI tool now, it gives you that maybe that person doesn't want 5 minutes of thin mint conversation. Maybe they want 20 minutes of thin mint conversation. Before it was kind of the law of averages, it seems like. Now you can actually drill in with AI and with these tools. So when you show up, you already set it an unfair business advantage. I love this.
I got to share one other story. So yes, yeah. I love your framework. I'm going to take the opposite of that, which was one of our wholesalers in my former firm was calling on an RV dealership. Mm-hmm. And it was classic. We knew that they were high eyes. High eyes like to talk a lot. The first hour was walking through RVs. 401k didn't come up for 75 minutes. Like, look at the fancy features in this RV. And our wholesalers going like, wow, cool. Well, no. So yeah, it is fundamentally a different playbook of having that structure that you mentioned, but know that you got to adapt to who's sitting across from you.
I'm thinking also about how right now we're going through the great wealth transfer from elder generations. A lot of advisors now are starting to do more wealth management, the convergence of retirement and wealth. And I'm also thinking about as that older person is stepping into the next phase of their lifestyle, their next phase of life. And now that advisor is thinking about how do you transition that dialogue to the children, that's where the majority of time, the statistics are off the chart. It's like 75+% of folks do not continue with the same advisor. They find their own. How do you change that? So if you run a crystal report on the children, who are most of the time not children anymore. They're in their 40s, like they're not kids. But if you run a report on them, because they have so much social media presence, being older millennials or Gen Xers, then you could probably, again, be able to immediately relate with them in a completely different capacity than you would have been speaking with their parents, who's also from a different generation. Because generations also like to be communicated with differently. There's so many applications. Okay, Randy, tell us a little bit about Fuss Success Builders. So that way, as advisors and wholesalers are listening to today's podcast in home offices, that they know how to contact you, get in touch with you, hire you, so that way you can share this great knowledge with them directly.
Very good. So let's kind of start with who my clients are. It's primarily the institutions that make up the retirement plan business. I work with broker dealers. I work with DCIOs, record keepers, TPAs, aggregators. And amongst these different groups, there's really kind of two very distinct and different applications. I'm first and foremost a speaker. I've been doing this circuit, so to speak, for 20 plus years. And quite often I'm hired to speak at a conference that will primarily have a group of advisors. It could be a broker dealer specific. It could be kind of more industry specific, industry being retirement. The second way, though, is I've been doing quite a bit of work, and it seems to be gaining more traction than just speaking to advisors, is working with the employees of institutions, primarily the sales teams, the wholesalers, the sales desk, of helping them with their soft skills so that they can have better dialogue. And guess what? They are primarily speaking with either plan sponsors or with financial advisors. In terms of how we could potentially work together, really kind of anybody that's on this call, I would love for you to have to reach out to me. My email is Fuss Success Builders, randy@fusssuccessbuilders.com. If you just want a little more tidbits on Crystal, the website's called Crystal Knows like knowledge, crystalknows.com. Any advisor, any wholesaler can get a 7-day free trial and rip out a couple of personality reports and have a chuckle over it and test its accuracy. If you want to get more enterprise level, I can certainly give you some information on that. Other than that, I want to simply share that at the end of the day, I'm all about improving performance for high performing teams, for advisors one-on-one. So I'd love to have you reach out, maybe check to see if I work with your firm and see if there might be some ways that we could help each other out.
Awesome. Well, Randy, thank you so much for joining today's podcast. For anyone who has questions on how to enhance the big three, wins, efficiency, and retention, reach out to Randy with Fuss Success Builders. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to today's 401k Marketing Podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of our guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of 401k Marketing. The content has been available for informational and educational purposes only. We hope you enjoyed.